Hello and welcome to Smoke and Mirrors here on AI and Games, and in this month's episode, I found myself sidestepping over to a corner of classic FPS games that kind of arose courtesy of two distinct projects. First up, I've been writing the script and working on the upcoming design dive episode on GoldenEye 007 by Rare, and also, in a completely unrelated situation, working on the Making of Sea of Thieves series after going to visit Rare's offices. And so I downloaded Rare Replay onto my Xbox One with the intent to maybe record some footage for the Sea of Thieves episodes. I wound up not using it, but as I was roaming around the Rare Replay game list, I spotted Perfect Dark, the spiritual successor to GoldenEye that I realised I'd never actually played. I knew all about Perfect Dark in that it was the big budget follow-up by Rare on the Nintendo 64, starring their own super spy Joanna Dark, but yeah, never played it. Given this upcoming design dive is all about the impact of GoldenEye, I felt it prudent to go away and actually play the Xbox 360 re-release of the game, given it might become part of the actual episode. What I found was really interesting, a game that has aged pretty well in many regards and terribly in others, plus some design decisions that are just very refreshing. So first up, I need to explain something. Yes, I owned a Nintendo 64, but the only game by Rare I ever had was Banjo-Kazooie. I mentioned before about my limited gaming budget as a kid, 2, maybe 3 titles a year, so I always had to be very picky. I completed much of Blast Core in one weekend after renting it from a local video store. And yeah, despite my impending GoldenEye design dive episode, I never owned that either. But it was the game everyone else I knew owned on the system, so I'd be playing multiplayer around at their place all the time and occasionally borrowed a copy to burn through the campaign. Perfect Dark came a bit late in the cycle, where I was kinda losing interest in the console, and I'd moved on to my newly purchased Dreamcast, which I still own today. Plus, Perfect Dark is one of only 3 games released on the console, sitting alongside Zelda Majora's Mask and Donkey Kong 64, that required the expansion pack, a 4MB RD RAM unit that was an add-on for the console, which I simply wasn't willing to pay the premium for. And yeah, that means despite my love for the Zelda series, something I never really talk about on AI and Games, I never played Majora's Mask until the 3DS re-release. But yeah, having played a lot of GoldenEye, you can see how this fits as a follow-up. It's using a slightly improved version of the engine, the game mechanics and mission structures are still intact, and all of the AI movement and behaviour is still in place as well. The thing that drove my desire to write the design dive episode in the first place. The enemy characters still have that wonderful combination of smooth movement, really nice animations, and even the navigation systems work really well. It's evident when playing missions where other characters have to follow you around these vast environments. It's not perfect, but given this is running on a console in the year 2000, it's pretty impressive. It's still roughly the same behaviours as you see in GoldenEye. Turn, aim, shoot, duck, aim, shoot, etc. I mean sure, it doesn't look all that dynamic these days, but it's strangely satisfying to shoot them all over again. Not just because of how much they clearly telegraph incoming attacks, but how relentless they can be too on higher difficulties. Now I'll concede, given I'm playing the Xbox 360 re-release, it's lacking many of the unique flourishes that N64 players experienced, with and without the memory pack. As such, the frame rate issues are gone, and all the art assets are of higher quality. One thing that generally impressed me starting it up was the voice work. There's so much spoken dialogue in this game. Sure, it's a bit cheesy, especially Carrington's overt Sean Connery impersonation, but it's really adding to the aesthetic they're driving for. But the funny thing about a re-release like this is that while it made some small changes that enabled for gameplay to work better on modern systems, such as the ability to use control schemes that align to Halo and Call of Duty players, it's lacking one thing that I really could have used playing through it: a quick restart or checkpoint system. Much like GoldenEye, Perfect Dark has a collection of objectives players must complete in each mission. The higher the difficulty, Agent, Secret Agent, and then Perfect Agent, the more objectives you're tasked with completing. Much like GoldenEye, many of these objectives are rather obscure, and you might find the odd hint towards how to solve them in the mission briefings. Note to self, read the mission briefings. That's when you realise, oh hey, you have 1 or 2 items in your inventory that are designed specifically to help complete those objectives. Now, you could go off and add a help system for identifying how to complete these tasks, but I can understand not doing that. You want to keep it pure. However, if you fail an objective or you die, you have to go through it all over again each time in a given mission. This strikes me as a bit of an accessibility issue when compared to modern games. You might still be trying to figure out how to complete a particular objective, you make a mistake, fail the objective, and then need to go back to the beginning. But the thing is, restarting requires you to pause the game, abandon the mission, go to the mission failed screen, go back to the mission briefing, then start the mission again. I was really trying to burn through the missions without looking up how to complete specific objectives, and I found myself caught in this loop a lot. I mean sure, most missions can be completed in 10 to 15 minutes, but still, when I've completed 2 or 3 objectives, then make a mistake and have to do it all over again, even in the easiest difficulty setting, it really kills my motivation to continue. I found this only really cropped up in the later missions, especially that god-awful final mission with a boss that just outright baffled me. However, for much of the game I was blazing through it quite happily. I discovered I really liked the pseudo auto-aim thing they use for the campaign. Sure, it takes the precision out of it, but then you weren't going to get that level of fidelity with a Nintendo 64 pad, and even with the controls mapped to a 360, it's still fiddly and cumbersome to make precise shots. It reminded me a little of the auto-aim system that's even used in the Turok remasters, which I talked about on Smoke and Mirrors last year. It fits both of these systems given their history, but it strikes me as a really cool feature that should be imported into more modern games. Both to better enable players who have accessibility issues, or just for people like me who just don't give two fucks about fancy-ass headshotting that 700th guy behind a crate in Call of Duty. So to wrap up for this episode, I'm really happy I took the time to play this. It's frustrating as all hell at times, but when it's in the groove, and as a player you better understand the nuances of mission design and what have you, it's a fantastic shooter, and I really enjoyed the auto-aim driven gameplay a lot more than I expected. I'm tempted to try and play Perfect Dark Zero at some point, given it's also on Rare Replay, and while people look back fondly on the first game, the prequel doesn't get as much love, and I'm kinda keen to find out why. However, that's gotta wait, as I promised myself that for next month, and in keeping with AI in Game's upcoming 5th birthday, there was another shooter on my backlog I really needed to check out, and that's Fear 3. Sure, maybe not what you were thinking, but given Fear was the first game I ever made a video about on the channel, I realised I've never played the third one, and I want to see what it's all about. I'll be back with that next month, but in the meantime, do share your experiences of Perfect Dark, a game that, like Turok, is probably older than most of my audience. Thanks for watching Smoke and Mirrors, and I'll speak to you again soon.